Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Your Creativity, my podcast about people's creativities and their different fields and interests. Today, we've got ANDREA Peterson from the You Again web series, which debuts in June. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dylan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Tell us a little bit about the web series, kind of like the basic, what it's about.
Sure, you bet. It's we have a fun log line. It's about a geek, a hot mess, and their goldfish named Duck. But basically, it's about two people who used to date, but the web series picks up after they've broken up, and the Audra character, who is the hot mess, has been kicked out of her recent boyfriend's apartment and is now back on the geek, Xander's, front doorstep looking for a place to crash. And it's just kind of a day-to-day life sitcom, quirky sitcom style of them and the supporting cast. And it's kind of an ensemble cast and their day-to-day lives. I would say it's a mix of Big Bang Theory with How I Met Your Mother.
Good mix.
Yeah, it's fun. So it's got, we do pitch it as a geeky comedy, but it's not like what you would think of Big Bang Theory. It's more probably like How I Met Your Mother with fun, geeky, meme-esque sort of references.
So where did this kind of come out of?
Sure. So it kind of got spurred on because my co-star, Zach Reynolds, he plays Xander and I play Audra. But we do a lot of acting together, and it's usually a lot of romance or dramatic stuff. And we've spent a lot of time crying on set. And we were actually in Monterey, California, filming a tragic romance, and we literally cried for 3 days straight. And Zach and I were like, we want to laugh. We want to have fun. And Zach, like I said, Zach Reynolds plays Xander, and he grew up with improv roots, and that's kind of where he is. So he's definitely driven by comedy, and he really wanted to get back to that. And, you know, it's a 12-hour drive between Salt Lake and Monterey. And during the car ride, Zach and I would just have these silly, silly conversations. I'm not as geeky as he is, and I would often make so many mistakes, and it would just be this constant bickering and banterment. And we had a friend in the car, Mario DeAngelis, who was like, you guys are funny. This should be a web series. And so we started talking about it, and one, two, three, 4 late nights later, we had a couple scripts and some characters made, and it kind of went from there.
Very cool. I actually knew Mario from a few years back. He was my teacher when I went to Broadview University. He was my photography teacher, and it's just been nice getting to know him. And
yeah, Mario's great. In fact, we wrote a supporting character, kind of sort of based on him. It's a grumpy cat next door neighbor character. So you might see Mario come and go throughout the series.
Yeah, the clips I've seen, I really like Mario in those.
Yeah, so we actually, like I said, it's an ensemble cast. And so, I mean, it is about Xander and Audra, and it's got that same sort of sitcom feel. Will they or won't they hook up? You know, who they are. It's called You Again. So, you know, they come back into each other's lives many times. But the supporting cast that is involved, the ensemble cast, you have Mario, who plays Marvin, who is the grumpy cat next door neighbor. And his character is very grumpy and gruff, and he often is just what and no and and, you know, his dialogue is very short. And he just kind of is that character that kind of strings along a little bit, you know, when they're at the apartment, Xander's apartment. Then we have Xander used to work full-time at this big technology company and now works part-time at a video game store. And so we have the characters at the video game store, his boss, Jace, who is this very young, more nerd than geek character. He's kind of like that guy that you see at the kiosks who works at like Sprint or Verizon. You know, he's got the pleated khakis and the popped collar, and he thinks he's really awesome, and he thinks he's God's gift to women. But he's really nerdy. And it's a fun character, a little douchey. And then Xander's coworker, Bones, Kyle Bones, which is kind of our Kramer character. and he's kind of a high-functioning pothead. Very, very quirky and out there. So we have those supporting cast members, and then we also have Audra's sister, Beth, who is the exact opposite of her. So Audra's a hot mess, and Beth has her life together. She's bubbly, she's happy, she's blonde, she lives in the suburbs and has a kid and a husband and all this kind of stuff. So that's a good fun foil to that. And then her husband, Calvin, who is kind of the stereotypical hipster. He's the king hipster, and he has his entourage of hipster buddies who come along with him. So, yeah, that's kind of rounds out the ensemble cast.
Very cool.
I've heard a rumor that TOI Soup is involved with this. Is that correct?
This is actually very correct. So Andrew Jensen is actually one of our directors, and he's been involved as a collaborating writer as well. I wrote pretty much every episode, but I've got to give Andrew credit. He wrote a good chunk of episode 8. So kudos to him. And the other half of TOI Soup, Troy Taylor, plays our Kile Bones character, so plays the high functioning pothead. So yeah, they are definitely
it's a big
involved.
stretch for him.
Right? It's actually a lot of fun because I don't have a huge improv background, but being the writer and one of the actors or whatever, there's a lot of improving on set, which makes editing a little difficult, but actually keeps the energy on set fun and spicy. And Troy definitely has a take or a different line for every take, which adds a little interestingness to it.
And those two can get spicy at times.
Oh yeah. Troy and Andrew are fun to work off of.
So now we'll start in on the questions.
Sure.
It's called Cre8tivity, and it's spelled with an 8 in there. And that's how I type the 8 questions into the title.
The 8 questions of creativity. Gotcha.
Describe what you do.
What I do. Oh, that is a great question. I'm a Renaissance woman. I guess that's what they call me. I do everything. As far as what makes me money, my career and passions, I produce, I shoot, I edit, I write, I act, kind of the whole thing. I have a production company called TOI Productions, and I created it because my background is in broadcast journalism, and I've kind of always had a passion for storytelling. And I went to school. I got my master's degree at Boston University thinking I was going to be a reporter. But I wanted to be more than a talking head. And I fell in love with kind of the documentary style of things. And I felt like they had stories to tell and I wanted them to tell the stories. And I kind of fell more in love with the humanitarian aspect of storytelling. And that's why it's TOI Productions, because there's a difference between can you see and do you actually see. And so I often did a lot of freelance work for nonprofit companies and news organizations and documentaries. And I've actually done a lot of travel down in Latin America, shooting mini docs and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what my production company started out as. And then, it's branched out a little bit. I do advertising and marketing. I do music videos, which I absolutely love. That really lets the right brain of myself come out. And then the whole independent film scene sort of just branched out because I do have a background in acting and I tried to keep it separate. But then as that happens, people find out that you can do this and you can do that. And independent film is all about wearing as many hats as possible.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. What don't I do is probably the easier question.
Okay. What don't do you do?
What don't I do? I don't say no to anything. I used to joke around that even I was more of a nervous adventurer. I would do anything, even if I was scared out of my mind. There's not much that I won't do, to be honest.
Okay. The second question, how did you get where you are today? Like kind of that place between school and
yeah, sure.
ending up in Utah.
Like I said, I've always felt I was a bit of a storyteller, whether that was like through performance or through writing or anything like that. So a lot of my career path has always been around that. In high school, I thought I was going to go into acting, and then I love my mom, but she was like, you kind of need to get paid. And so journalism, the pursuit of journalism was a way to act and get paid. But my undergrad was in literature. I double majored in literature and sociology, and I actually had a concentration in criminology. I thought I was going to go into the FBI or CIA.
Oh, cool.
And I took a bunch of forensics classes. But me, I either do everything 200% or not at all. And I wanted to go into be a secret agent, and I wanted to, James Bond it, out there. But I also am a super extrovert, and the idea of not being able to come home at night and tell my husband or tell my family what I did during the day would drive me crazy. I love to be a part of life and to involve people in my life. And so that whole like secret agent, like don't tell people who you really are kind of thing wasn't going to work. It'd be a little difficult if you're an extrovert in that sense. And then the other thing was to go into forensics. What people don't realize is it's so specialized. And like we had several different forensic scientists come and talk to us in our classes. And you know what? If you are like you specialize again, like you would be a hair blood splatter analyst, and that's it. And you would analyze blood splatter from hair. Like it's not like a big thing like you see on television like CSI where they're like analyzing and out in the field and all that kind of stuff. It really is specialized, which makes sense because you need to be. Yeah. And I think I would have gone crazy just focusing on one thing. I'm not much of a cubicle person. I'm not much of a one person. Every day I want to do and see something different. So that was my undergrad, and I moved to Boston. So I met my husband in college. He's a trumpet player, and he got into grad school in Boston. And so we moved to Boston, and he went to school at New England Conservatory, and I worked at a publishing company. And, the whole storytelling aspect sort of thing. But I was in a cubicle, and I was like, I can't do this. And I met a friend who was like, why don't you go into journalism? You're outgoing. You could tell different stories every day. And I was like, sure. And so that's what took me to Boston University, pursue it. And then, like I said previously, I just wanted to tell stories. And so that's what got me out there. And then my husband got a job down in Miami as a musician. And so we moved down to Miami. Well, actually, okay, so back it up just a little bit. So I was at BU, and I started interning for Good Morning America in New York. And I loved it. And I loved news and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that's what I wanted to pursue. But news is, as much as it's exciting and different every day, it's still a little factory line-esque in what they do. Yeah. They find a story, they find people that they're going to interview, they go out, they do the interview, they edit it, it's a 1.5-minute segment, and then it's over. And I just wanted something with more shelf life. And so that's why I pursued more of the documentary sort of longer stuff. Yeah. So I was actually in New York at GMA when my husband called me up and was like, hey, I got a job down in Miami. Do you want to move? And like, I'm sitting there like in the newsroom as an intern at Good Morning America going, no, I've got my foot in the door in New York. But I was like, you know what? Forget it. We've never lived in Miami. I have a bit of wanderlust. Let's just do it. So we moved down to Miami, and actually like a month later, ABC fired like 400 people in their news division. This was in 2008, 2009 when the economy crashed, all that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of like, okay, this was good timing. Yeah. Journalism took a huge hit. So we moved to Miami, and I worked for a production company down in Miami called Plum TV. And they were kind of a lifestyle network, and they were based in kind of major resort towns. And we shot segments, we shot news stuff. And so I got to do both. So I got to do more of the longer form journalism style stuff as well as the morning show sort of stuff. And that was a lot of fun. And then they sent me up to Martha's Vineyard because they had a team up there, and I worked with their team as a producer, shooter, editor. And then sadly, the company went bankrupt about a 1.5 years after I was with them. And so I moved back from Martha's Vineyard down to Miami and just started freelancing. And I worked for a news organization based out of Colombia. And then just freelanced down in Latin America for a couple different clients. And then my husband got a job with Utah Symphony, which brought us to Salt Lake. And I just have been freelancing in Salt Lake since we moved here. I guess that was 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
So there you go. That wasn't the abridged version. If you'd wanted the abridged version, my apologies.
We'll have the cliff notes for the episode available.
Sorry about that.
Next up, what types of conditions are the most creative for you? It sounds like that car drive was the most for you again.
Conditions for me are like late at night. I am very creative at night. The hours of 2 to about 6 are my dead times. That's fiesta time for me, or siesta time. I apologize. I like to take naps. First thing in the morning and at night, that's when I get really creative. I don't know why I wake up after about 10 p.m. and then from like about 10 p.m. to 3 a.m., my mind's alive. That's where I do a lot of my editing. It's where a lot of my writing comes from. I just, I howl at the moon. It's great. A little whiskey and a little computer, and then all of a sudden I've got 3 scripts going. Also, some people say that creativity happens in the shower, but for me, it's out running. Oftentimes I can get lost on a run. In fact, I remember exactly the moment the Jace character in my web series came about was in the middle of a good 6-mile run. And I remember running around Liberty Park in downtown Salt Lake, and I was trying to come up with additional characters, and I was trying to figure out who needs, who to add on to. And I was thinking that Audra needed a friend. Xander needed a friend. And so I was trying to think of another guy character, and then I thought of a girl character, and I was like, well, no, Audra's that girl character. And then it kind of came out, and I was like, well, if he works at the video game store, what if the boss? And then it kind of came out, and then, and so I remember actually the leg of the run when I was like, Jace Larson. And that's how he came about. So so running and hiking and late at night, those helped me be really creative.
Who has inspired you most and why?
Ugh. That's that question you ask creatives. Everybody inspires me. The world inspires me. No, that's not the question. And that's not the answer you want. I don't know. It was, you sent me those questions and I really struggled with it. Recently I'm definitely inspired by Wes Anderson and Edgar Wright. And I think that's because as a cinematographer or having that eye, some people will say actors, because I have the acting background, but I love how they're able to use the entire frame, the entire aspect, the art, everything that you see as a viewer to tell the story. And I think it's really important that everything should be a character in the story. And maybe that comes from my writing background and a little bit of my journalism background. But just the way, Edgar Wright uses things entering and exiting the frame to enhance comedy or enhance the story. And we all know Wes Anderson, and everybody knows it. Every aspect of the frame, the way it's set up, the set pieces, the way the characters are moving about inside the frame. I just think that's really important. And I think it adds to the element of the story that you're watching and seeing and feeling and hearing. So those two really inspire me. And in fact, when I'm writing, I have a tendency to write knowing that that's going to play a huge role in how a piece of comedy happens or how the next scene happens or how the characters react. So right now, those two guys are a big inspiration.
Have you seen that new Lagoon commercial?
Yes, I have seen that new. It reminds me of Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah, very Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah, that's what I think of when I see that one. Yeah.
Online, there's this great video. It has clips from Wes Anderson movies, and it shows all the shots that are
they're
symmetry.
blind. Yep, symmetrical. Actually, my favorite. A lot of people say Moonrise Kingdom is their favorite. Mine is Grand Budapest Hotel. And the reason that I say that is because I actually have ADD when it comes to watching things, and I usually have to be multitasking. And for being a filmmaker, it takes a lot to get me to sit down and focus if I'm not in a movie theater. And I saw Grand Budapest at my sister-in-law's apartment in Seattle. And we've been drinking and we're just socializing. And literally I was sitting on the floor playing with my dog. And I just remember an hour and a half later, I was still in the same position, mid-pet of my dog. And my eyes had not moved away from the screen. And I was like, okay, so this is something that drew my attention.
Very nice. Yeah, all of them have been good. Rushmore is still my favorite.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I think we all have our favorites.
I'm locked into that one. Tell us about how You Again was created. You kind of covered that about the car ride.
Yeah.
So I think we can move on from that one.
Well, I can add a little bit. So Zach is one of my best friends, and we do a lot of acting out there. And the characters are loosely based on ourselves, but kind of more exaggerated version of ourselves. And I think, as an actor, you don't want to be locked into a stereotype, and you also don't want to be well, of course they can act that because they're just being themselves on camera. But acting as yourself is actually really, really hard because you overthink what you do and how you do things. So it's harder than you think just acting as yourself. But and I think in TV and episodic things, when you're playing a character more consistently than just maybe a film or a play or something like that, and you know that you're going to have to recreate this very naturally, I think it helps if the character is similar to you. And I think when you see interviews with celebrities and actors out there, I think, and people are going to hate me saying this, but I do think a lot of TV actors, episodic actors, you kind of look at them and you see them on an interview and you see them in real life and you're like, okay, I can see that character on camera.
Yeah.
So I think it does help. And I don't, some people might hate me saying this, but I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think it just helps you feel more natural. So like I said, so these characters, Audra and Xander, are more exaggerated versions of ourselves. I'm not a hot mess in real life, but I am a free spirit, and Audra is a free spirit. She just happens to drink and party a little bit harder than I do in real life. And she, can I say bad words on here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. She has a tendency to be bitchier than me. I would like to think that I'm not bitchy, but she definitely twists it in, pours salt on the wound to get reactions. And she also is a little bit ditzy in the sense that she just goes through life as a bit of a bulldozer and doesn't really think beyond what seems like in the moment. And she has good intentions, and so I think that's what keeps her from actually being a bitch, is that she's not malicious. She just kind of trips and stumbles through life. And I'd like to think that I don't do that as much. And Zach as Xander, Zach is super geeky. He's a con guy. He loves to play video games. And in fact, I'm going to give him a shout out. He's starting a Let's Play called Digiwets. And I don't know if you know what Let's Plays are.
I don't.
So a Let's Play is basically where they play video games. Him and his, whoever's on the screen with him, plays video games and chit chats through it. And this is a thing that gamers like, I guess. I don't know. Again, like I said, I'm not geeky enough. Okay. But he's super geeky. But the Xander character is more of a pushover than Zach is in real life, and is more aggressive with his geekiness than Zach is in real life. So, like I said, it was easier to write these characters and develop these characters when they were kind of loosely based on us as people. And it's fun to write and tell stories with your friends. So that's part of you again.
Nice. What has been your favorite part of the production?
Oh, gosh, it's so stressful. Independent filmmaking is such a challenge that people just, I don't think, realize. They see major productions out there. Even nowadays with Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon, everything just looks so polished and professional, and it is. But when you don't have a budget, it's so hard. So I know that wasn't the question you asked me. We're in the middle of production right now, and so everything just seems like such a weight on the shoulders.
Yeah.
I think, writing was a lot of fun. Auditioning was a lot of fun for the supporting cast. To see the characters come alive was really cool. And then to finally get on set and see these scenes that have been in my head as actual real scenes. And, they don't look anything like what I thought. There's some, attributes that I saw in my head and I was like, okay, I really want to see it happen this way. And then, I told the directors and the directors made that happen. But it's so different when you see an actor and a director outside of my brain pull what I wrote, and it's like, oh, that's what you see, and it's awesome, and then some. It's just really neat. So I think seeing everything go from words on a page to real life has been one of the coolest things for, I think, a writer. And I think a lot of times in Hollywood and in production, the writers aren't as involved because everybody has their own place. But in independent film, you get to be super involved, and so I think that has been really neat to see it transform.
Movie-wise, I like to see writer-directors mostly, like Kevin Smith and Wes Anderson and them, just because they have the passion from the page.
Yeah, it's
to the screen.
It's neat. It's hard to you want to make sure that you're not controlling and you allow fresh eyes and all that kind of stuff. And I definitely and that's been a huge thing with you again. Is it's been a collaborative process in the very beginning. Yes, I did write it, but as soon as I wrote an episode, it was fished out to Zach, my co-star. We joke around. We call him the geek dramaturg to make sure all my geek references are real. And I fished it out to our director of photography, Holly Tuckett, because she's shooting it, so I want to know what she sees. And then we actually had a collaborating writing team, which involved Andrew Jensen, Tim Drake, and Ben Hopkin, as well as myself and Zach. And, we got together a couple times and we went from episode 1 to episode 12. And literally we did this Thanksgiving of 2015 and we locked all the episodes together. But it was like, I want to know what you guys see and what you guys feel and, tweak the lines. And I'm totally fine with that. I'm not some person who's like sold on a line. The only thing that I actually ever put my foot down on is because as a writer, seeing it episodically from beginning to end is that I know that there's story arcs and certain character developments that have to hit and land a certain way. And since we have multiple directors directing multiple episodes, when we're on one episode, a director might just see that episode, but I see it from episode 1 to 12. And so it's like, actually, the character needs to do something this way or react this way because in episode 8 and because in episode 10, this happens as well. And so that's usually the only time that I'll kind of come in and push a little bit or put my foot down just because of logically it has to happen that way episodically. Yeah. But other than that, I don't ever want to think that I know everything. And that's why I have a production team, is because I want to see them help this be like really funny or really creative. And I don't know everything. So I love being part of a team. I thrive off of teamwork. So yeah.
Very nice. And then question number 8. Audra.
It's already over.
We can talk. Well, there's other shows coming in, but
there you go.
Audra is a big junk food in the show.
Yes, she is.
What is your favorite junk food? And why?
That's a really easy question. Yes, I actually, before I tell you, I'm going to give you a little backstory. Oftentimes, writers or writer actors or director actors don't really throw themselves under the bus enough because it just happens out there, especially with women. And I hate saying this, but females like to look good and they want, the best romance. They want to look pretty. They want to be the hottest thing on camera. And it was just really important for me to be the exact opposite. I was like, I need to throw Audra under the bus. Like she needs to like get hit by the bus a couple times and tumble through the bus a little bit. And I wanted her to be anything but amazing. And so, adding her hygiene is questionable, her romantic life is questionable. And and so we kind of used food a little bit to make her kind of disgusting. And she's always eating in every episode. Yeah, she does. Okay, I wasn't sure if she ate in episode 1, but she does. She actually picks up right at the end of the episode some food and a beer. And so it kind of made this joke because in Ocean's 11.
I was just about to say, I saw an interview with her where you mentioned Brad.
Right, Brad Pitt is like eating in every episode, and in every scene, and I thought it was funny. And so Audra eats in every episode, but it's interesting. Like in episode 2, she wakes up and can't figure out the coffee maker. So she fills a mug with hot water, then pours coffee grounds into the hot water, and then stirs it with a Cheeto stick because that's what you did. That's what Audra does. So she has Cheetos. She's often eating Cheetos or coffee or beer, or she loves candy bars. And we make a lot of, in episode 6, they go on a night hike, or not a night hike, but they go on a hike and she tries to fight off this squirrel with a candy bar. It's just stuff like that. But the one piece of junk food that she's often eating is Cheetos, and that is to pay homage to my guilty pleasure of Cheetos. And it's not just any Cheetos, it's Cheeto Puffs. And, I'll go even further to say it's not just Cheeto Puffs, it's the Cheeto Puffs at the bottom of the bag that are really greasy and buttery. The ones that liquefy in your mouth. Yes, that's disgusting. But that is my junk food guilty pleasure. And that being said, though, usually the days on set that I have to eat a lot of the Cheetos, I do get tired of them. We shot episode 12 recently of season 1, which is the last episode. My character takes a bite of a Cheeto. But she does it. We had to do multiple takes from multiple angles. And I did get to the point at the end of set where I was like, no more Cheetos.
We can put in here?
No more Cheetos. I'm done with the Cheeto today. So sometimes that does happen. So yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, and join us next time.